All right, welcome again, CIS 297. It's called Intro to C Sharp, but we do like all things C Sharp except for web development. I love web development in C Sharp, but there's a whole other web development course, and we just don't have time for it. So we'll do all sorts of fun stuff here. It's 3 credit hours. Oh, I didn't change the number. Shoot. Okay, I did a bad copy paste. My apologies. It is for 24. Thursdays here in Castle, we'll meet. This is me, Eric Janeski. I'm a Leo Lecturer 2. The university administration does not allow me to use the title of professor. So if you call me Professor Eric, I will probably give you a good-natured hard time about that because they don't allow me to do that. In 5 more years, after I've been teaching for 12 years, I can ask nicely, fill out a bunch of paperwork and say, please, can I be called professor? And then they can say yes or no. It's a whole thing, don't worry about it. You'll probably hear from other lecturers that we're doing bargaining. There's all sorts of union fun stuff here. Don't worry about it. It's okay. It's a whole thing, but I enjoy pointing that out because it irritates me. And if it irritates me, you get to know about it. So I'm a fun person like that. This is my email address. If you use Canvas to send me emails, it goes to my non-priority inbox. So if you'd like to email me, just actually hit compose email, right? It'll actually come to my phone right away. I'll see the Canvas things eventually, but it doesn't notify me on my phone because every time someone submits something, it notifies me from Canvas, which is lovely. So regular email is great. This is my cell phone. I have an office number, but I've never used it in the 8 years I've been here. So please just use my cell phone. You can call or text anytime. If I'm busy, I've got another job and I have 7 kids at home. I'm busy a lot. I'll get back to you later. Let me know what is a good time to get back to you. My typical working hours are after my kids are in bed. So I'm up working like 11 p.m. to 4 in the morning is when I like to work. And then I don't get up till noon the next day because I got into software for that reason. So I don't have to have mornings. Mornings are the worst. So if you want me to call you back at 1 in the morning, I can probably do that. If you want me to call you back before you go to work in the morning at 7 in the morning, I probably won't do that. So give me a couple options at least. I'll do what I can. I hang out in the CIS building between classes. So I'm teaching 3 different classes this semester here. So Tuesdays and Thursdays between those 2 classes, I'll be hanging out there. CIS 239, it's the lecturer office in the CIS building. It's the fun brick building that has no classrooms. You might never have been in it before. It's okay. There is a lab though, which is nice. The course description was a copy paste. Hopefully nothing new here. Our program learning goals, depending on what your program was, courses should map to program learning goals. So all of the courses in a particular program at some point somehow point to those learning goals. Take a look at those. The common course objectives here are what this specific course looks at. We only have 3. We have a 3 credit class. So we'll look at designing and implementing simple games. Yay, I love games. This is actually one of my favorite things because this class gets to be fun. We don't have to do dumb things. We get to do fun things. We'll explain algorithmic trade-offs considering when choosing a particular means of animating a game sprite. That sounds like a mouthful. We actually just pawn this off on a library and say, hey, library, you know how to animate things, do it for me. Doing it by hand is better sometimes, depending on what you're doing. So there are some trade-offs here, depending on what library you're using, depending on what platform you're using, depending on what you're building in, essentially. So the reason why C# is in the game design track is when you get into doing Unity scripting, you do it in C#, which is lots of fun. Dr. Maxim heads up that program, and he said, Unity is great, but don't use it, because then it ruins the game design class when they use Unity. So sure, that's fine. We're going to use a different platform for building games. We just do it all of our own. There's some Windows libraries we're going to use. So this is a very Windows-focused class. C# is getting to be more cross-platform, but not everything's there yet. And the things we're going to do are very Windows-focused. Eventually, we'll get a game running on Xbox One. It's a little old. The ideas are still the same ideas here, and developing on the newer Xboxes are more expensive, and they'd have to buy new ones, and money, right? Apparently having 50 of you pay for tuition and pay 1 teacher doesn't make them enough money to buy new Xboxes. So that's out of my purview. They just pay me to teach. So that's what it is. And then we'll write medium-sized programs in C#. You've probably gone through some of your earlier classes. You do small size or mid-size. Now we're up to medium size. We'll do some fun stuff by the end. Typically what we do, I would demo them, but I can't at the moment. I can run them on my PC. We use the Universal Windows platform, so you can run them on PC or Xbox, which is really fun. So you can develop them, test them out here, and then play with them on Xbox later if you want. So I might try that after break. I'll see if I can load a couple up. It was all working, and then the Wi-Fi stopped working, and IT doesn't know why it doesn't work yet. We tried for like half an hour before class and just gave up and said, we'll play with it later because class needs to start. But eventually we'll get them working on Xbox. So the last night of class, you all will show your games off. We'll play the games, and we don't have a final exam. We just present your final projects. It's a lot of fun. It's another reason it's one of my favorite classes. All right. So for materials and technology, the main textbook here is not really a textbook. This is more of a, not even really a reference book. So this guy, R.B. Whitaker, is really cool. He's got a Discord server he runs. He actually responds to my emails when I email him things. He puts a lot of time and effort into it. It's like $30. Pretty cheap when it comes to books. And it will do nearly all things C# as like a quick intro to C#. And he focuses it sort of gamey. Again, why I like it. I like games, that sort of thing. So I've got the PDF of it that I paid for, and I've agreed not to share the PDF. Please don't share his PDF. Like, it's $30. If you can't make $30, let me know. We'll find a way to get you a copy of the book and get RB his money, because it's not Pearson who's charging you $200 for a textbook. Forget, I hate Pearson. Go download their PDFs. I don't care. But he's a nice guy. We're going to use the GitHub website. So GitHub is a hosting provider of the Git source control tool. Git is the most widely used source control tool in the world. Like 80% of developers nowadays use Git on a day-to-day basis. It's fantastic. GitHub gives away their service for free for educational use and open source use. So we can use it for free, which is fantastic. And then code will all go to GitHub, and Git, which is made to host code and share code and do that, and you don't have to attach things to Canvas or email me files, which I hate, because that is very tedious and it takes way more time than it should, and it's just not meant for code. We're going to use a tool that's meant for code that's actually used out in the industry. It's got a bit of a learning curve, but I promise you'll get there. It's not the end of the world. Tons of videos online on how to do the things, so don't worry too much about it. You will need Windows 10 or 11 to do the last couple things that we get into. The first couple we can do with the cross-platform tools on Mac when we're doing command line apps. If you really want to use Mac, I think .NET MAUI still mostly works on Mac, but it's clunky. It was newish last year. It's been around a little bit longer. They're putting a lot of investment into making this platform work for cross-platform development, but it's not as good. Would definitely recommend Windows, or just come to the lab and use the Windows PC in the lab. Visual Studio 2022, the Community Edition is fine. We're going to install a couple workloads. So when you go to Visual Studio Installer, there's a couple workloads that we need to do C# work. Right? You probably already have the C++ one installed from taking earlier classes here, I would suspect. So if you want to play with multi-platform app UI, this is the MAUI stuff, you can check this box. I'll demo it. I'm not going to ask you to do it. And it's a kind of a big install, but it's fun. If you are bored or want to do things and try it out, go for it. We'll need the .NET Desktop development for C# development, and later we'll use the Universal Windows Platform development workload as well. So these are the two we're going to need to do all the stuff we're going to do in C#. Right? This one's just for fun if you want to check it out. And again, I'll do a demo of it probably next week or 2 weeks. I got to look and see at the schedule again. But we'll need those workloads. The Community Edition is fine. You don't have to pay for anything for this. It's free for educational use. You just can't sell the stuff you do, but the stuff we do as college students, no one's going to buy anyway, so no one cares, right? It's probably pretty fair. For how you get your grade, right? This is what everyone seems to care about, because letters mean a lot of things, and GPAs and all sorts of that nonsense, and keeping a good GPA to get internships, so when you apply for jobs, and that whole nonsense. I get it. It's academia. This is what we're going for at the end of the day. 10% of your score comes from quizzes. Every week, I'll have a quiz over the material we've talked about in class in the chapters. These are open book, open notes, open internet. The goal of this is to get you to read the book. Honestly, that's the entire goal. I want you to actually read the book. You don't have to even read every word, but know what each paragraph is about, and if there's a question about it, know where to go look. Right? I was a developer for almost 20 years, and no one had ever asked me to do something from memory, because that'd be stupid. Right? Don't memorize stuff. Just know where to go find it. Right? Good developers know how to find information. We know how to try things and solve problems. That's what we're good at here. There's a funny t-shirt here. Developer, the average bear. This is totally worth it, I promise. Come on, t-shirts. Come on. This one. Okay. What I say, I'm a software developer, and what people hear, I apologize to read to you, it's a little small. I can repair your computer, fix your internet, configure your printer, revive your phone, set up your email, hack into any system all for free. What I really mean is I can Google better than the average bear. That's really the skill, right? Learning how to go find things. So that's what we're working on. So I don't expect you to memorize anything. right? Just know where to go find it. That's sort of the goal here. So quizzes to get you to go open the book. The midterm, it's 20% of your grade. It's a decent sized chunk here, but it's also open book, open notes, open internet, not open neighbor. Everyone will agree to that ahead of time, and almost all the time people are good at that. They've agreed to not cheat with a partner because they can go look things up online anyway. Right? It's not hard. This is sort of like a midway through. We've finished all the C# topics that are in the book. Let's do a little status check, see how you're doing. Usually I don't time it as well either, because whether or not you can do something in 3 hours or 4 hours or 5 hours is sort of important at some point. Like, you don't have unlimited time to get work done in the real world, but just because you can do it fast doesn't really mean a whole lot of stuff. That sort of thing comes with practice. So generally it should be untimed. You'll just have some time to take it, like the regular quizzes. Open them up, look at them, come back to the questions whenever. It'll be due the end of the week. So more just a checkpoint. If it went well for you, you should feel pretty good. If you struggled on the midterm, that's the time to know, hey, things didn't go well. Let's figure out what's going on and how to get you back up to speed. Okay. The individual projects we'll be doing make up 30% of your overall score, and the group project at the end makes up 40% of your overall score. The idea is you can't pass the class without the group project. So if you get fired from your group because you're a terrible group member and didn't contribute, you fail. That's just automatic. Right? There is no way to pass without that. So this is your incentive to be a good team member. We've got a month to work on it, so it won't be too bad. We'll have time at the end of class, the last couple weeks, and the very last week, or second to last week, sorry, of regular class, we'll have time just for the group project. So you folks can get together and work on it together. If you get it done before finals week, even better for you. That's fantastic. Then you have nothing to do for this class aside from play your game, which is actually, I mean, they're not great. They're little Atari clones. Like, you pick an Atari game that you like, a little 2D game, and you build it in C#. It's a little bit fun. I'll demo some of the ones we've done before. It doesn't have to be amazing, right? It's just, we'll go through the process and use some tools, some of the things we've learned. So essentially, the first half of class before, they called it spring recess on the academic calendar, but I'm pretty sure spring doesn't start until mid-March, late March, right? I don't know why this is called spring recess, but maybe it'll be warm for us. Who knows? So we'll go through all the C# stuff. We blitz through the chapters. This goes pretty quick. It's not a very big book. If you get the physical copy, it's maybe this thick or so. It's pretty large print. We'll go through all of that the first half, have our break, come back for the midterm, right? And then after that, we'll get into some of the more advanced, fun topics. Database programming in C# is phenomenal. Anytime we work with data in the real world, it's stored in the database somewhere. Occasionally we do like local files for things every now and then, but nearly everything out there is backed by a database somewhere. There's data somewhere. So this is a topic I'd like to bring up. It's very useful. It's something you can talk about when you apply for internships and things. I've had someone tell me before they actually got an internship because they had experience with Entity Framework. And I was like, yes, that was super cool. I can't promise that'll be the same for you, but we'll talk about it. It's a lot of fun. And you'll look at how you can do all the cool database stuff right in code, because C# has some awesome libraries for it. You don't need to know really anything about databases. I'll talk a whole lot about them. We'll look at some of the basics of them, but we'll do it all with code, which is fantastic. A lot of fun there. And then we'll move over to the Universal Windows Platform and this XAML thing we'll talk about and start doing our final project. So we'll talk about some intro to XAML, we'll talk about graphics and game building. The last week of regular class, again, set aside just for the teams to work together, get anything last minute worked out. Happy to meet with you folks and do that sort of thing. And then we will present our final group projects. I think this is the old version. I updated this already. We'll present our projects during our final exam slot. So we'll just take turns playing the game and everyone claps for you at the end, and it's pretty easy. So it works out pretty well. This is my favorite class to teach here at U of M. It's just a lot of fun because we do fun stuff and nothing's like super critical because we're doing games, right? Sorry, I drink a lot of coffee. I had my first class at 9:30 this morning, which I hate mornings. So this was a pot of coffee and 8 shots of espresso from my favorite coffee shop, Caffeine Fairy. She's super sweet. And I'm most of the way through that now. So if I'm going too fast, please just holler at me. I'm super informal, just yell. If you raise your hand, I might miss it because I'm looking at things up here. You know how you get those end of semester surveys? They're like, please rate your prof in the class here. Years ago, not the first year, I think the second year I taught this class, someone left a comment, and it's a little bit embarrassing, but I'm also a little bit proud of it. They said, Eric is like a squirrel with an adrenaline shot. For a night class, I think that's kind of a good thing, but I do need to slow down a little bit occasionally. So just reel me in if I'm going too fast. I've again have 7 kids at home, and I'm always caffeinated just to keep me alive and awake and functional. So it's okay to slow down. I probably have enough to share if anyone else wants a cup, but not enough for everyone. So first come, first serve. If you want a little coffee at break, it does help with these night classes because they can be a little rough. And we do nearly 3 hours of code. So I generally try and break at 7 and break at 8 for a 5-10 minute break. But it works out that's still like 2.5 hours straight of sitting and listening to me talk and showing you code. That's long, but that's how these 3 credit night classes are. There's not a whole lot of other options for them for you. So we'll get through it. Right? It'll be a lot of fun, and I do record them. So if you get tired and want to go home, go home. Watch the recording later. Right? If you're sick, please don't come. I have 7 kids. I keep saying that over and over and over. I apologize. But I get a lot of germs at home. Right? I was just sick last weekend. Everything got behind because I got a sinus infection from a cold I got. It was awful. Don't come. Just watch the recording. You're perfectly fine. Right? I'm not going to take attendance. There's no points for showing up. Right? The points that you get are for doing things. Mostly your work. Right, showing that you can write code that works, functional here. Right, talking about code here, our academic integrity policy. This is specific to my course here. I'm a bit of a stickler on this. It's a real pet peeve of mine. Cheaters should not get degrees. And it's in your best interest as well that your classmates don't cheat and get a degree, because if they go out and get hired and can't do the work because they never learned a damn thing because they cheated their way through school, that employer won't want to hire another graduate from U of M Dearborn. They'll say, we did a terrible job teaching people. Why would I hire from there again? So it's in all of your collective interest not to let people cheat and get their degree, okay? I am more than happy for you folks to talk to each other. Use English, talk about your ideas. That's great. It's actually really lonely to be a developer and never talk to people and just work all by yourself, right? If that's your thing, go for it. I'm a bit of a people person. I kind of enjoy being with people. It's draining for me. I'm still an introvert, but I like people. It's just, it takes a lot of my energy, and I have to go home and have some quiet time and play some video games or something and relax. So, you're welcome to talk about code, right? In English. If you start sharing code, you've gone too far, right? Then we're getting to the point where people might be plagiarizing off of you. They're like, hey, I want to see how you did this particular function. Tell them, no, go get lost. Right? You can describe how you did it. That's great. Most of the time, when you folks write code, it will look very different from each other because everyone has their own unique style. Even if we follow our formatting guidelines and those sorts of things, variable names end up a little bit different. Your spacing ends up a little bit different. Things are different for most people, right? It's not the easiest thing when there's 50 of you to notice if 2 are the same, but occasionally I catch that sort of thing, and then I have to file a bunch of paperwork, and doing paperwork pisses me off, right? The amount of paperwork I have to fill out to fail someone for cheating is ridiculous because I have to document all these different things. I have to show them that I have a policy in the syllabus. I have to tell them that you've acknowledged the policy in the syllabus. I have to show them this is the assignment. I have to show them where you found this thing. It's a nightmare, and I hate doing it. But I've not yet had a semester since I started teaching in 2012 where someone has not cheated. And I just don't get it. I don't know why people would even risk it. I get life is hard, there's pressures, you want to get good grades, and all that sort of stuff sucks. I come off like a bit of a jerk, but just talk to me. Tell me what's going on, right? If you had an absolutely crappy week and something didn't get done, we can be flexible. I'll try. I'll do what I can, right? It's not worth cheating. Promise you, okay? The poor dean has to take care of all my reports when I fail people. I had a case, I taught a CIS 200 class, and in the final exam, back before COVID, we used to do exams. One of the good things that came out of COVID is we realized exams aren't really great for measuring if people can code. We should do final projects. And then we can actually talk to students about their final projects, and they can present it and talk about their code. It's really easy to tell if you have no idea what's going on in your code when I ask you questions about your final project. Right? If you wrote the code, you can answer the questions. It's really easy. If I ask you a question and you can't answer it and you don't know what's happening in your code, I know you didn't write it. Right? And some people will BS their way through. I'm not going to pretend I'm perfect and will catch everyone. But most of the time it's pretty obvious. So I had to fail 7 people for cheating on the final exam. Because CIS 200 is a prereq for the next class you take, they had already registered for that class. It was the final exam. They couldn't take that next class. So they all went complaining to the dean, hey, what do I do here? It's going to put me off a semester and I won't graduate on time. And the dean was like, okay, we'll take it again at the same time. And they're like, okay, well, who can teach it? And everyone else was already booked because it was, the next semester was starting in a couple weeks. So they're like, hey, Eric, can you teach this as an independent study? It's like, sure. So they paid me to give them more projects because they cheated last time. So I made money for failing people. Thank you for laughing. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's kind of ironic, right? I get you. It's your money, and maybe it's not funny to you, but we can laugh at other people being stupid about cheating, right? Okay, we'll do that. So just don't cheat. That's the easy thing. Okay. Under no circumstances may Chegg.com be used. They are the worst website in the world. They are awful, terrible people. They have the ability to keep my assignments and questions from being on their website for 24 hours if I ask them and tell them it's for an exam. After that, they say, F you, Eric. I'm going to let people post the stuff and get answers. If you can keep it off for 24 hours, you can keep it off forever. They choose not to because they make money off of letting people get answers from their, quote, tutoring service, their cheating service. So Chegg is awful. They're getting sued by Pearson, who's also awful. I hope they both lose. I guess the lawyers win on that one. But sure. So don't go there for anything at all. Using them as a source is an immediate violation of the policy. Just stay off of Chegg. Okay? That makes me much happier. Other cool things, though, are ChatGPT tools. You've probably heard about these sorts of things. It's sort of a hot topic. I'm great if you use them, but you need to cite your source. This is academia, right? Using someone else's work, someone else's ideas, and putting your name on it is plagiarism. You've probably taken enough English classes by now, right? We're college students, that you know you can't use someone else's work and put your name on it. You have to cite your source. I'm great with that. Cite your source. Now, some of these are a little bit tricky. So for ChatGPT, tell me what you asked it. Right? OpenAI has the link for the conversation. The U of M ChatGPT tool doesn't. This one is version 4 instead of the 3.5 one you get for free at OpenAI that you have to pay for to get for at OpenAI. I can't keep up with it, honestly. Like, it changes every week. But you can use it if you want. Cite your sources. But that being said, English paper rules apply. You aren't going to turn in one giant quotation for an English paper and say, hey, look, here's my paper. I quoted someone. Obviously, that doesn't work, right? You have to do original work. So your original effort has to be added to what you get from these tools, what you get from online. Hey, I found an algorithm online on Stack Overflow. I know the website exists, right? I've been around a little bit here. Great, cite your source, say this is where I got it from, but you're adding original effort. And really, as software engineering evolves and we use these tools, developers use them to be more productive, but we still do the high-level, creative, critical thinking piece of how do I take a bunch of things and put them together and make them work to solve a problem. That's the hard part, right? Whether or not you can write set functions and get functions, I don't care, right? Use the chatbot. It's faster to write your sets and gets. C# has some sweet shortcuts, which is fantastic, and that sort of thing. But again, this is academia. You're going to cite your source, okay? But it won't be hard. You just put a comment in, say, hey, I asked ChatGPT for this. This is what I asked for. We're great. We're golden, right? If you're not sure, just ask me, right? I promise. I'm not going to be like, hey, you asked me a question, now you fail, right? As long as you haven't turned it in and said, this is my work, we're good. Question me anytime you want. Show me what you got. I'll tell you about it, okay? Right? Happy to do that. I really dislike failing people. It's a lot of paperwork, and it's bad for you, right? Bad for a lot of people. For late projects and homework, generally they're not accepted. Extenuating circumstances, let me know. I'll be flexible where I can. But generally, I will go over solutions to the homework in class. I've found, and generally people say it's worthwhile, to watch how I would solve the problem. And I've been doing it for 20 years, so I approach things a little bit differently than you might. So I will show you, this is how I would go solve the problem here, and you can see the solution. That generally seems to be worth people's time, so that works out well. But once I've gone over a solution, I can't take it late. There's no like, hey, you get 10% off for every day that it's late, because I've already gone over the answer, right? So I think that makes sense. All the projects except this very first one tonight, we'll have time to work on. We'll have 2 weeks to work on. This first one, it's barely a project. It's just a quick little starter thing. Should take you like half an hour, maybe an hour. It's not too bad, I promise. I'm going to call it a game, but it's not a game, but I'll explain that later when we get there. And then for the food pantry, this standard syllabus stuff we have, there is a food pantry here. There's this cool guy named Maslow. He has this hierarchy of needs. Turns out if you don't have the things down here, like food and water, sleep, I'm skipping some of these here, that's okay, that it's really hard to do the higher level things, like creative work. Right? If you're hungry and can't focus on that, or worried about where you're going to sleep at night, it's very difficult to be creative. So again, the food pantry is fantastic. Reach out to them if there's something they can do to help. For COVID policy, we still have this here. Just don't come when you're sick, please. It's super easy. Just watch the recordings. And then all sorts of other university-wide policies you can find in Canvas. I do want to make one mention here, our safety policy, our plan to run, hide, and fight. Again, I like running. I have 7 kids at home. If I get an alert, I'm out the door and gone. I have no responsibility for you. Just a warning. If it's our building, then we start piling desks up places and pray. But aside from that, I'm out the door and gone. Just okay, this is what we're going to do. Okay, I hate that I have to say this. This is the world we live in. It's terrible. If you can't laugh about it, you cry. And sometimes you cry at night about it, and that's okay. So that's for that one. Okay, all the other ones you'll find standard out there. We should be in pretty good shape. Questions, thoughts, concerns? Again, I got to take a breath. I'm sorry. The espresso is really good. Oh, really good. Okay, awesome. All right, so I've got 6:40 on the clock. Not too bad. Not too bad. So I want to show you a couple things. So I did put a couple links out here. The syllabus earlier today, so again, I'm a little behind from getting sick. The course repository, again, because GitHub is meant for code, not Canvas. Canvas is a terrible place to put code. But if other people, other profs, other lecturers tell you to turn your code into Canvas, don't tell them Eric says they're an idiot. Just smile and nod, right? Because they're going to escort you, right? If you tell them, no, it's stupid to put code in Canvas, they'll probably not be very happy, right? I can have that conversation with them because they don't have to score me. Well, that's fine. I linked my website just for fun. It's got all my course repositories, the other classes I teach here. It's a fun page. And then the Discord server, if you like Discord, I have a Discord server for my students. It is public, so use whatever username you'd like. Right? I invite everyone to it, so you don't have to have your name in there. I'll know who you are when you turn stuff into Canvas, because Canvas knows your name. Right? If you'd like to use your name, go for it, but other people will see that. Again, FERPA and federal privacy laws and things, you've been warned that you'll be freely giving your name out if you use your name. Other than that, use a handle is perfectly fine. For GitHub, again, use a handle if you want. You get GitHub profiles here. So whatever username you get, it's github.com/your username, and it shows repositories you have and public things like that. You're welcome to be, Apple if you want, or anything you want. You don't have to use your real name. I use my real name almost everywhere because it's easy, and I'm the only Eric Chinesky in the world. It works out pretty well for me. I'm also kind of a big, tall, white guy, so I have the advantage that I just don't really care. So, and then this Git commit history is a fun joke out in Silicon Valley. People use this for dating profiles. They're like, look at how much code I write, look at my Git commit history. This is these like little green pictures you've seen. You might have seen around online on whatever social media sites are popular nowadays. I'm not a boomer, I'm a millennial, but I'm still on Facebook with all the boomers because that's where all the rest of my millennial friends are. But I see all the nonsense boomers post on Facebook, and I can see why you folks don't want to use that. I get it. Everyone's already there. There's the critical mass. So I've got that problem. But all right. So for the course repository, all the code examples I do in class, I will put out here on my public GitHub repository. It also has a copy of the syllabus because Markdown is fun and cute. I can put a copy out here. So you don't have to go to Canvas and open up the Word doc and do all that nonsense if you want to see what's going on. And then as we go, I'll post the recordings here as well. So you can come back here and look at, hey, here was the recording from week 1, recording from week 2, week 3, so on and so on and so on. You can see them all out here. This is where I'll keep them up to date. But any of the code I write will go out here. You don't need to follow along. You're welcome to if you want. I type relatively fast. I use lots of shortcuts. Most often when people try and follow along, they get frustrated at me. So I just don't recommend it. And then good developers are lazy, right? You're lazy. You don't want to do more work than you need to. I'm going to give you the code. You can just copy paste if you just wait a minute for me to commit it to GitHub. Right, that's all. And then you can take the examples and play with them and modify them and do whatever you guys want to do with the code if you want to look at the examples again. Works out pretty well. So I'll use Git for this. You can make copies of this repository. I'll show you the whole process probably after the first break for how you'll turn in your own work. This one is a public repository that I'm going to put my code in. When you submit work, you'll have a private repository that you have access to and I have access to. That way no one else can copy off you, which is a good thing, right? So there's a link I'll give you from classroom.github.com that makes a private repository, right? When you click it, it generates the repository, does a whole bunch of cool things for us, and then you can follow the workflow I'll show you to get your work in GitHub so you don't have to email me code, okay? Again, I get irritated easily, so don't email me code, please, okay? I'll show you how to get it into GitHub. It works out really nice. Honestly, for like the earlier projects, I've been doing it long enough, I can just look at your code and generally have a pretty good feel if it's going to work or not. I don't even have to download and run your code most of the time, right? Occasionally, if it looks really weird and I'm not sure, I'll go download it and run it to figure out if it actually works or not. Well, most of the time I just look at it, and GitHub is really good at looking at code. So if we take a look like at Microsoft's account here, their VS Code repository. So repository is just a fancy word for folder. Occasionally we also name, like, they're similar to projects, but not every project is a repository. Not every repository is one project. You can have multiple projects in one repository. It's just a convention. So VS Code, it's a fantastic text editor. And if you're using Mac, you can use VS Code for C#. If you want, you can do it on Windows too, but I would just recommend Visual Studio because it's better. You got lots of options. But with GitHub, the idea is it's a source control tool. Git's job is to track files in a folder. That's all it does. It says, hey, at this point in time, this is what the files looked like. Someone changed it. At this point in time, here's what the files looked like. Here's what the files looked like. And it's a manual process of making commits, or what we'll call a snapshot. Here's what the folder looked like at this point in time. Okay? So Git was created when our friend Linus Torvald, the founder of Linux, decided the existing source control tool sucked. And he said he could do better. And indeed he did. Git is the best source control tool out there. It's fantastic. So if you want, because GitHub is the hosting provider, they give you a web view into these Git repositories. You don't need any of the web stuff, but this is nice, and it gives us a cloud-based service you can get your code out to. So once you get your code out in the cloud, you basically can't lose it, which is really nice, because every time something happens and someone's like, oh, my laptop crashed and I lost my code. I'm like, well, if you put it in GitHub, you can go pick it right back up where you left off on another computer. And the people are like, oh, I didn't commit the code. I'm like, I can't help then. Like, it's gone. Like, what do you want me to do? I can Google things, but I can't fix a dead hard drive. So, but you can go and see. So anything that is a folder, you can just go and open. So there's source folder here. You can go and open and say, hey, I want to look at what's in their server CLI.js file. This one's not super interesting. That was kind of a boring file. Let's try something inside of VS, maybe inside of editor. Let's look at the editor API.ts. This is a TypeScript JavaScript file. Lots of fun. We can see here's all the code out here. Git lets me view code online. It's fantastic. The other fun thing, because Git tracks changes here, I can look at the history and I can say, hey, this file has changed at this snapshot, at this snapshot, at this snapshot, and who did it? Which is great. You don't have to put stupid comments in your code and say, hey, the author is Eric Chernesky, because Git knows who the author is because you logged in. Right? It saves you all the you don't have to put a last modified date in the files, which is also stupid to put a comment in for, because Git tracks that. It knows the last time it was modified. Right? Git solves a lot of these problems for us, which is fantastic. So looks like it's mostly this Alex Dima person modifying this one. Right? At some point, someone else changed it. Fleon changed it. Alex did. Alex did. Alex did. And you can see these little messages. These are commit summaries. I'll show you all that in a little bit, but you see those on the website, which is nice. So there's different for what sort of messages we should put in here. That's all. All right, so I'll put the code out here. So I'll show you just my other class here for a second. Let me find 200. So for CIS 200, right, I can say, hey, here's the week 1 examples I did. Here's week 1. Here's the CPP file. You can go view my terrible code. There's nothing special here. It's just some example code. But we'll build that out in C# when we start writing C# code. I'll get it all out there for you here. So let me do the first one. So we pull up Visual Studio. We'll write hello world because someone decided that is the very first thing you should do every time you learn a new programming language is make it the computer say hello world. And who am I to disagree? Right? We'll just go for it. So in Visual Studio, once you've installed the workloads, it's probably fastest to pick your language drop down here and pick C#. Right? You can just go find it too if you want. And we're going to find oh my goodness, where did it go? There's a lot out here because I installed all the workloads. Not forms, not application. Where did it go? I just did one, I swear. None of those, none of those. Console app, there we go. I want all right, I'm going back to the search box. There's too many and I'm overwhelmed. Let me search for console. Here we go. So when you find console app, depending on what you've installed and what platform you're on, you're going to get different options because C# does a lot of different things nowadays. Microsoft spends a lot of money investing in C#. That's a lot of fun. The first one here, you'll notice, is tagged with Linux, macOS, Windows, and console. This is the cross-platform .NET Core version of the .NET framework. All sorts of crazy things. We'll read in the book eventually. C# is a managed runtime language. So it runs on the .NET framework or .NET Core managed runtime. So C# doesn't talk to the operating system directly. It talks to this intermediate layer, which then talks to the operating system. That's sort of the idea here with that. So we compile it down to machine interpretable MIL, I think is what it is. Sure, that's fun. We don't get something that will actually just run bare bones on a computer, right? It has to run with this platform in mind. The .NET framework is the older version that things have been built on for years and years and years and years. The .NET Core is relatively new. It's been a few years now, which is great. They've been putting a lot of effort into this once Microsoft realized they should be cross-platform. So we're going to pick the console app, not .NET framework version. They'll basically do the same thing for you, but they'll look slightly different. Here, there's a couple extra bells and whistles we get in .NET Core, which are great. Not really the end of the world if you pick the other one, but this is the better option for you as well. And then if you're bored, because you installed their workload, you can also do Visual Basic Programming if you want, which, fun fact, compiles down to the same thing C# does. Right? They're both managed runtime on the .NET framework, so you can write it in either language. It will compile to essentially the same thing, which is fun. So a console app, and then to get something in GitHub, Git is just a folder watcher. Right? The Git tool watches a folder. So I have a copy of this repository, I have a copy of this folder on my computer. So to get the copy from the website, this is my favorite. There's always 3 ways to do everything, but from the website you can click the code button and say open with GitHub Desktop. Again, I don't recommend you do it with this one because it's probably easier to just copy paste in your own projects. You don't have write access to my repository, it's view access. So if you try and change things, Git will get upset with you. It's probably easier for you to copy paste. It's not too bad into just whatever your sample projects are. But I said, open with GitHub Desktop, and it made a copy of it. I said, hey, it's going to clone it here to my computer. So Git is a distributed source control tool. Everyone who has a copy of the repository has all of the history everywhere. Other tools work a little bit differently. And actually, depending on how big your project is, can be nice to not have everything because they get really big, depending on what you're working on. But this repository now exists on my computer and exists on the github.com cloud. Now we have to keep them in sync. Syncing them is a manual process. Unlike your OneDrive or Google Docs or sorts of things that as you type, it syncs, you don't always want that to happen with your code, right? Sometimes you want to do a little bit of stuff first and see if it works or not, and then you just get pissed off and throw it away. That's okay. We've got options. So the sync process is manual. That's what a commit is for us. It will make that snapshot, that point in time, this is what it looked like. If you want to see, you've got a couple shortcuts here. You can say show in Explorer. We'll open up your file explorer right to where this folder is. Windows loves to put stuff in OneDrive because they want everyone to pay for their OneDrive service. Great, most of the time it's really cool. If you have Git code on GitHub, which Microsoft also owns, and it's in your OneDrive folder, now Microsoft has 2 copies in their cloud, and we just laugh because we're wasting bits. It's not going to hurt anything. OneDrive will do a lot of churn when you write projects, right? When we build things, we get a lot of files generated, we delete a bunch of files. It slows things down to put it in OneDrive, but it doesn't hurt anything. So mine is not in my OneDrive folder, which upset Windows, and now I have 2 different documents folders, which confuses me occasionally, but that's okay. So here's the path. So you can just copy the path here and paste it in your location. That's the easy way. If you like browse, you can click your ellipsis and go browse and find it here. That works too. And I'm a fan of doing less work and being lazy, so I'll do copy paste for everything and everything. I can copy paste, I'll do it. And I give it a name, right? This is Hello World, like our typical project here. So Hello World is going in this folder. When you are doing projects that you're going to turn in, you're going to have a repository. It'll say CIS 297, winter 2024, the name of the project, and then your username. That's how you know it's yours, and it's unique, and all sorts of good stuff there. Now, there's another checkbox here. You can place the solution and project in the same directory. Generally what happens, I don't know, you probably didn't get far enough to do multi-project solutions in C++ yet, but a solution in Visual Studio is 1 or more projects. Right? You have to have at least 1, but you can have multiple projects. So if it's a 1-to-1, having a solution folder with a project folder inside of it, a little bit silly. So we now have a button that says don't do that. If I'm only going to put 1 project in 1 solution, I don't need an extra folder. It saves me 1 click. Yay, I've saved half a second. But sure, half a second across 50,000 developers, we've saved a lot of time. So this was a nice little checkbox to add. So I'm going to check that box. Okay? And I'll say next. Now you get a framework option. So .NET 6 or 7, every other version Microsoft says they'll support for X number of years versus the standard will only support a shorter X minus something. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't really care because I don't have to support these apps for enterprise applications. I will throw them away after class. And that's okay. So 6 or 7 should be fine. Every next version you get a couple more bells and whistles. So usually the latest is fun. That's great. And now we get another checkbox here that says do not use top level statements. So if you click the little question mark, oh, come on, is it just a hover? There it is. If you hover over it, it says whether to generate an explicit program class and main method instead of top level statements. This checkbox is a little bit confusing. By default, it's not checked, and we get the new latest and greatest version that doesn't look like a class with a main method. If that's uncomfortable for you, check the box. You get a class with a main method, just like C++, right? Public static void main or whatever it is, int main, those sorts of things. You have that. Right? So I was thinking about Java in my head. Great. It will do the exact same thing. So if we don't check the box, it assumes some top-level statements for us and actually wraps everything in an implicit class. Yay, we don't really care one way or the other. I'll do both, so you can see both here. So we'll start with the one that does not use top-level statements, which sounds like it's not going to do the thing, but it does the thing. Again, it's not too bad. So I'll say create. And now in the GitHub desktop client, it says, hey, there's new things, right? Git watches files inside a folder. Anything green is new, anything red is deleted, anything yellow has been changed. It says, hey, there's a new CS proj file, C# project, there's a new solution file, there's a new CS file, C# file, right? And I can see them, because they're text-based files, I can see the text. Works out really well. Code is written in English, right? So we can read it, so we can see it really easily in Git here. Now I can make a snapshot if I want. Right? Commits are free, but there is a little bit of electricity use, but we don't pay for it, right? Somewhere out in the cloud, electricity gets burned. Less than Bitcoin mining, so don't feel bad about it, right? If you want to go after something, go after the Bitcoin miners. They use a lot of electricity. So I can make a commit. So the summary box here is required. So I can put anything I want here. You can put anything you want there. I don't care what you put here. When you go out and get a paycheck, they will tell you what to put there. And just smile and nod. It's not hard, right? If you have to have very specific details there, go for it. If they say we don't care, they don't care, right? You can say garbage. It doesn't really matter. So here I'm just going to say hello world without top level statements. Again, the messages show up on the website, so having something meaningful there can be useful later. Could be. Otherwise, people will just ignore them. So I'm going to commit. So now I have a blue button here. So blue is like, hey, I should click you. It tries to draw your attention to it. Now, my local copy of the repository has something that the cloud repository doesn't. So with Git, it's a push system to push things out to the central, generally a cloud, and to pull things from the cloud down. For us, when it's only one person, we're just always pushing. We're never pulling anything. When we start working in teams, we have multiple people contributing to the cloud. I have to pull their changes down to my computer, right? Because multiple people will push. When there's something different, it says, hey, you need to pull those changes down. Great. Works out pretty well. There's a couple of gotchas we'll get to when we start working on team projects. The last project I recommend people do in teams is sort of a trial run to see if they're going to get a good partner or not. You don't have to do it in partners if you don't want to, but almost everyone does, because why not? So that sort of thing. So I'm going to push. So push is the manual sync. Once I've pushed, now it just goes back to fetch. I can click on fetch as much as I want. It will look for changes. Say, is there anything to pull? Do you have anything to push? Now we've manually synced. So if I view on GitHub again, I can see I have a folder for Hello World. I can click that, and inside of that I have my files. I can click on program.cs, and I can see the C# code that's written here. So I can zoom that in a little bit, right? If you want to see the code. The other really cool thing here, because again, this is an enterprise tool they sell to organizations, I can click on these line numbers and be like, hey, here line number 7, and you see the URL? Added this #L7. That's a pound sign, by the way, not a hashtag. Just to make things clear, I'm that old. Technically, it's an octothorpe, if you like really technical terms, but people will look at you like you're crazy if you say octothorpe. But the hashtag is used when you include a word, right? Just the pound sign itself is just a character. It's not a hashtag unless you include a word with it. If you like to argue semantics, which most developers do because we think we're smart people and we like to argue stupid things. I don't know why. It's just sort of a trend of software engineers. I don't, Sure. So anyway, so you see #L7 for line 7. So this URL now you can take, copy in Discord, email it to me, like, hey, Eric, at this line, I'm getting an error here. And I can look right at your code at that line number. And again, a lot of times I can just look at your code and see what's going on. Occasionally I have to go download it and run it and put it in debug mode and figure things out. But this is why I love GitHub. You just give me a URL, I can go see your stuff. Right? I don't have to download anything if I don't want to. I don't have to go and unzip files. I don't have to deal with downloading attachments from Canvas. Right? It makes life easier. And we all want life to be easier, okay? All right, so that's our hello world. I didn't hit run yet, but debugging works the same way it did in C++. You've all debugged things, right? Everyone should be nodding, please. Please. Okay, my 200 class this morning, I asked, you all debugged stuff in 150, and not everyone nodded, and I cried, because that was really sad. Like, I don't know how you get through all of 150 without running in stuff in debug mode, unless you just really write really good code, which is very unlikely, because you're in CIS 150. You've never done code before. So anyway, so I'll hit run here, and we should get hello world. Hey, hello world. And then you get the notice here, like you can automatically stop the debugger and do all those things like we did in C++, because Visual Studio is amazing. But it does run an executable here. But again, what's happening behind the scenes is the executable is talking to the .NET Core intermediate layer, which then is talking to our operating system. All sorts of neat stuff happens behind the scenes. If you like that deep level architecture stuff, there's tons of stuff out there. They had an hour-and-a-half long interview with the lead developer of the garbage collection team for .NET Core. I got through about 5 minutes of it before I just, like, even 5 minutes was a stretch for me. I was like, I should try, because I could probably understand what they're saying. I had no clue. I had no idea what this lady was talking about. She was so smart, talking about garbage collection things and how they manage memory. I'm like, I just like that my computer doesn't crash when I ask for objects. That makes me happy. I don't care how it works. And sure, right? Different people like different things. I'm glad we have smart people who know how to make computers do those things. I just like to make fun stuff. So that's my personal preference there. All right, so this is without implicit top-level statements. So we get a namespace. Namespacing is just a way of grouping things together. You get an internal class program. Generally, it's public, so there's a couple different access specifiers. You've probably looked at private and public before from C++, maybe protected. Internal is specific to the package or project level. It's like another level above this, but behind public. Sure, great. It's a default. We just take it and we're happy. Most of the time, it's fine. We're not writing libraries for other people to consume, so we don't care. As long as it runs, we're happy. I don't care what internal, public, private it's going to use. Doesn't matter. And then static void main instead of int main. And this takes a string array called args. You can pass command line arguments to your programs if you want. You might have done that in C++ and looked at command line arguments. It's a bit of a pain to do, so generally we skip over it. But sure, so if you'd like to run things at the command line and say, hey, I'm going to go into terminal and run my application here, we can do that sort of thing. So I can go to my documents, my GitHub, CIS 297, inside of here. I've got hello world, inside of there, was it bin and debug.NET 7. All right, inside of here I have my executable. So I can say hello world exe, and it runs. Right? If you like running stuff from command line, go for it. I apologize, I wasn't trying to show off. You can run stuff this way if you like. You might have remembered doing a Unix lab in 200 where you have to do stuff on a Unix server with the command line and open up Vim. We just did that today, so I'm still traumatized from trying to exit Vim again and trying to remember what the right keys are, that sort of thing. Okay. This is the main example. So let me go do another one now with the implicit top-level statements. It's not going to look very much different here. So again, I'm just going to search console because there's too many options here. Find the one that's C#, Mac, Linux, Windows here. Great. We'll call this hello world with top-level statements. Sure, that sounds right. And then now we don't have the box checked, which is not do not use. Sure, it's a little weird, but that's okay. So now when I create my project, all I get is console write line, hello world. All of that other stuff of here's the namespace, here's the program, here's the main method are implied. Anything that goes inside of here, C# is like, oh, hey, it's probably inside your main method, right? And when it runs, it does the exact same thing, right? So it takes away a lot of the cruft. A lot of the cool features in C# are there because developers write C#. So other developers can write applications, generally for Windows, so Microsoft will sell more copies of Windows to enterprise organizations who have money, right? It's all about the money. There's a really fun video of Steve Ballmer. It's got a lot of warts, that's okay. Not a hero in any sense of the imagination, but there's a fun video of him shouting developers and sweating through his dress shirt at some keynote, and it's developers, 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 because the more developers they can get using Windows, the more copies of Windows they sell. Right? It's not really a pyramid scheme, but that's sort of the idea. So a lot of these tools they'll give away and encourage people to write software that people want to run on Windows. Now, stuff is cross-platform, and they've got other revenue sources and things like that now, and they're trying to be a little bit more friendly. Mr. Satya Nadella, I'm terrible at names here, has done a really good job of positioning Microsoft, and that's a whole other story. Weirdly, if you follow the history of Microsoft of being a terrible company and stealing people's ideas and things like that, when the whole blow up at OpenAI happened and Sam got fired, it was really weird to see a whole group of people saying, hey, we're going to go join Microsoft now because they're not the bad guy. That would not have happened 10 years ago before Satya took over. So he's done a good job changing their reputation. I'm a bit of a Windows fanboy. I apologize. I don't like Macs. I don't use them. They irritate me just because they're different and the menu bar hides itself. And for some reason, that is like the most frustrating thing on Mac, that the menu bar is not there on top of every window for me. And I have to like scroll up to the top and it's only active on one window. And for some reason, that just is terrible. All right, so I got a little after 7. We should take a break. I've been talking for a while. I'm going to eat some food or chips here because why is the cafe not open for evening classes for people to get dinner? I went at like 4:30 to try and get some dinner and it was closed already. It closes at 4? Do they not know we have evening classes? Like, who do I complain to about that? It's like the dean of students or someone like that. She's really nice, by the way. Her first year, I think it was her first year, was the year COVID hit. And I had a student over at the union, and they were hanging on the Discord, and they like didn't know what else to do. They're like, hey, I've got COVID. My roommate has COVID. Can someone help? And they needed toilet paper. I was like, I don't know what to do, but the dean sent out an email and said, hey, if you need something, let the dean know. So I emailed the dean, and she ran them over toilet paper to the union. And like, she ran into me last year and remembered me from that interaction. I was like, that's a funny way to remember someone, but okay, cool, you're nice enough. So back when you couldn't find toilet paper, she brought one of the big commercial rolls out. And other student, they posted a picture on Discord about it. They're like, look what I just got. It was amazing. So we'll take a break. We'll come back in maybe 10 minutes or so, about 7:15, pick it back up. And so I'm probably going to stop recording. Otherwise, there's like 10 minutes of dead air. So we'll have like a couple different chunks of it probably. It'll probably be easiest, okay? All right, thanks.